So our presentation looked at a paper on global warming and sea level rise and its impact on agriculture and food security in southern Bangladesh.
So, as stated from the title, our paper looked at the country of Bangladesh. It is located between India and China in that region. The southern coast of Bangladesh is a very vulnerable region because of the extreme weather and temperatures that they see in those areas. Looking at a map of the coast specifically, there are many outlets that bring salt water into the coastline in the form of estuaries. These estuaries bring a lot of fresh water out, but because there's a lot of flooding and storms and cyclones, it brings a lot of salt water into the coast as well. The coastal lands deal with a lot of high salinity levels seen in the water and the soil. Some problems faced by the coast are, as I stated before, storm surges, cyclones, and salinity level increases in the local land and water because of those factors. Regular floods, or a quote from our paper says that regular river floods affect 20% of the country, increasing up to 68% in extreme years.
So the hypothesis of our paper is that global warming and sea level rise will have a negative impact on agricultural production, food security, and an overall negative impact on populations that live on or near coastal areas. So basically what that's saying is based on current trends, they believe that saltwater rise will continue to occur and make food instability even more of an issue for Bangladesh and just harm their overall agricultural output.
The methods that were used for this paper, the first method that they used is they compared global data on climate change, sea level rise, and other weather pattern data to local data in Bangladesh. So basically, they would look at things like temperature over the seasons or precipitation over the seasons globally, and then they would compare it to the local data from Bangladesh. Other information was gathered from local stakeholders. So these were government officials who have a lot of data on the land and how it's being used. So they asked them about it as well and seen what's changed over the years. They conducted personal interviews with the farmers that live on the coast. They asked them how their farming has been affected by climate change and asked them whether their crop rotation patterns had changed because of climate change. They also used on-spot observations. So after something like a storm surge, they would go to the spot and take pictures and observe what happened.
So the results of the study were incredibly extensive. So we decided to narrow the results down to what we think are the most important and significant. So one of the main results of the study is that it found that the national temperature in Bangladesh will exceed 1 degree Celsius at the end of the 21st century. And they got this data by analyzing the average temperatures globally and also the average temperatures in Bangladesh. And from this data, they believe that the winter season is going to shorten or completely disappear. And this means that crops that require cooler temperatures will be unable to grow, further exacerbating the food crisis. And this table looks a little confusing from the beginning, but basically it's a projection of mean temperature across the coastal regions of Bangladesh. So in the left-hand column, we see they took this data from 4 divisions within Bangladesh, and the values that are circled in red show how much they believe the temperatures are going to change from the base temperatures of 2010. So you can see how much the temperatures really are predicted to change between 2010 and 2100. And they did this with the summer temperatures and also the winter temperatures. So their results are honestly shocking. And there's going to be a lot of change in the temperature as the years progress. This graph basically shows that within the next 80 years or so, most coastal areas will be underwater. Therefore, they're not going to be suited for crop production. And you can see that the sea level will increase pretty rapidly between 2030 and 2100. The orange bar shows the land inundation by the salinity. So the sea level will rise to a certain degree, and then more land like that hasn't been covered by the sea will still have those high salinity levels. So that's why the orange bars tend to be longer than the blue bars, because the blue bars just show the sea level rise. But overall, you can see there's going to be a huge increase within the next 80 years. And then this map shows, again, the projected salinity intrusion, as I was talking about with the other graph. And this is what they predict the salinity levels will be at the end of the 21st century. Looking at past data between 1973 and 2009, salinity intrusion increased by 27% in southern Bangladesh, and the salinity is only going to increase further into the land. And as you can see by the map, increased salinization affects non-coastal areas as well. So the red shows areas that are going to be the most affected by salinity, and then the lighter red shows areas that won't be as affected. But as you can see, there's a lot of dark red areas that aren't necessarily directly on the coast. So these impacts will be far-reaching.
Overall, things aren't looking too good. This is putting it in very, very nice terms. This is global warming is not a future problem. This is a now problem. Most people see global warming as like a very far distant future thing that won't affect us, but we can already see the effects now. In Bangladesh, a lot of environmental factors are increasing. There's a big increase in cyclones, rising temperatures, and there's also a very high rising sea level value that can be seen over time. There will be devastating consequences seen for coastal people and their agriculture. But this is not just the case. Devastating consequences will also be seen for national people as well, not just people living on the coast. Food production and food security, which was already vulnerable for these people, will be even more so as time goes on. They've had a hard time struggling with food security specifically for probably around a century, and in this coming century, it will probably become even worse. Agriculture in low-lying areas will become more difficult, if not impossible. These areas that are behind the coastline and are below sea level collect a lot of water from things such as storm surges, and the salinity from that water leaches into the soil. So agriculture around those areas is very difficult. And the dry season will hamper crop cultivation even more. During these dry seasons, we sometimes see very harsh droughts, and with the increase in the salinity of the soil, along with less available water, it'll be even more tough to grow any types of crops.
So things are looking pretty gloomy for Bangladesh, but there are some future solutions in the works, and these are outlined a little bit at the end of the research paper. So one way to kind of combat this problem of food instability is developing new strains of crops that can withstand higher temperatures and increase salinity. And this is already being done in certain types of rice. They're genetically modifying rice to be able to withstand higher temperatures and increase salinity, and even they're able to withstand being underwater for a long period of time due to floods. Another way to kind of address the food instability issue is to increase shrimp farming, which can be done in areas that are have a higher salinity and are flooded more often. So by relying more on shrimp farming and less on traditional agriculture, Bangladesh will be able to reduce their food instability problem a little bit. Another possible solution is the construction of barriers, and these would involve basically creating walls to keep salt water out of freshwater sources. But this solution isn't as feasible because it's more expensive, and Bangladesh's economy isn't the best, so this might not be the best solution for them just because they don't have a lot of extra funds to be throwing at this problem. Another solution is promoting the construction of aquaculture areas for a source of food, and this involves setting specific areas in the ocean where you're going to breed you're going to breed fish that reproduce quickly and grow quickly. And this will help alleviate some of the food instability. And then finally, the study mentioned that coastal stakeholders are continuing to collect information to work towards solutions, and they're trying to include the local people as much as possible in this because ultimately they have a lot of knowledge of the land and the best practices for it. And these are our sources. Thank you.